Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. I'm joined today by Julia. Julia, can you please share a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and tell us what you do?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Dr. Glove. I'm so happy to be here. So my name is Julia Toothacre, and I am the Chief Career Strategist at ResumeTemplates.com. Been doing this work for a long time. I have about
Mm.
15 years of experience in career development, and specifically for resume templates, I provide context and thoughts to the surveys that Resume Templates puts together regarding the world of work and different trends that we're seeing. And I give my opinion based on my experience as a career expert, meeting with clients and doing all of that work.
Excellent. And you put out a survey that a number of white-collar workers should find alarming recently. Tell me a little bit more about the survey.
Yeah, so we did a survey that was geared toward AI. And as most of you know, there was a statement made not too long ago by Microsoft's AI CEO, basically saying that in the next 12 to 18 months, AI was going to take over positions and take over entire
Mhm.
functions within organizations. And so our company did a survey to see if that was true and what business leaders were saying. And so we actually surveyed 933 executive level business leaders who have say and decision
Mhm.
in these types of situations. And we got their opinion, and some of our results were very interesting, to
Mm.
say the least.
Excellent. Well, before we talk about the results, tell me a little bit more about the survey methodology. What did you do? Who you reached out to? Like, how was the survey done? You're an expert on the surveys, and my audience will probably appreciate knowing and understanding where you and how you gather the data.
Yeah, so we actually use an organization that allows us to be very broad with broad, but also specific about who we are pulling for our surveys. One of the things that I love about using these organizations is it gives us a
Mhm.
more, um, what's the word I'm looking for? It gives us a better, picture of what we're trying to get instead
Mm.
of a very one-sided view of a topic. So if you think
Mm.
about somebody who does a survey off of their email list or off of their website, that's great. But a lot of times the people who are on the email list or on the
Mhm.
website, they have a very specific view, and that's why they're
Mhm.
there. So sometimes that view can get skewed. So one of the things that we try to do is look at people across the board. And so we will divide that throughout different regions of the US,
Mm.
different ages, if it's something that's appropriate.
Mhm.
This one is more high level. So we were looking at C-suite, VP, director level. And they were adults who were about age 30 to 70, so they did have more
Mhm.
experience. And they had an annual income of over $100,000. So
Mhm.
we were definitely trying to filter out and find the right people
Mhm.
to ask these questions because of the nature of the topic.
Excellent. And from the C-suite, are these folks who run SMEs, small medium enterprises, or are they people in large companies, or are they a mixture of both?
Great question. So we do a mixture across. So we will have some
Hmm.
people who are part of smaller organizations, and then we will go into larger organizations in order to get a range for the answer
Hmm.
so it's not one-sided to either type of organization.
Okay, great. Now that we understand where the data came from, tell me a little bit more about your findings.
Okay, we had a lot in this one. So some of the top findings, we had 60% of business leaders agreed that most white collar work would be fully automated by AI within 12 to 18 months.
Mm.
And I was most shocked about
Hmm.
that number. I
That is
actually
shocking.
felt like that was really high. And so sometimes we don't always understand what the thinking is of why people are answering the way that they do. But I feel like that's a number that I might push back a little bit on and say that I think sometimes when we're at the higher levels, we have an idea of what
Mhm.
we want it to be. But the reality of that happening and the
Mhm.
systems that we have in place and the trainings and all
Mhm.
of that in order to get there, I don't know that, you know, that's always going to be understood at those higher levels because they're looking at the organization as a whole. They're not
Mhm.
necessarily in the weeds of the day to day for every single function. So that was a data point I could push back on a little bit.
Okay. So do
Yeah,
you figure that that data point, let's talk about that data point. Do you
sure.
figure that that data point is more aspirational rather than realistic? Tell me a
I
little bit more about
do.
your perspective on that.
Yeah, I do think it's aspirational. I think it's a little bit of, if we think about people who are in those executive positions at organizations,
Hmm.
they're very in tune with this type of data. They're very in tune with, what is being said out in the market around AI in their field,
Yeah.
all of those different things. And so I think that they're probably hearing that message over and over again. And so they assume, oh, we can probably make this happen too. And this is
Hmm.
going to be the goal that we're going to have. It's not to say that they won't get some part of that, but I
Hmm.
still feel like 12 to 18 months to
Hmm.
completely overhaul your organization
Sure.
to be AI based. That just feels very unrealistic to me.
Yeah, it definitely feels so. I work with companies on AI adoption, and I definitely do not see that that's a realistic goal because what I tend to see happening is when companies adopt AI, they typically, it's not like companies aren't like Block and they don't fire 40% of their employees. What they typically do is that they freeze hiring,
Hmm.
and generally freeze hiring or maybe hire AI oriented people only. And
Hmm.
then they focus on training their existing staff to essentially be managers of AI agents. So AI tools, they have them train them on how to build AI tools using no code, low code tools. And then they have these people essentially automate parts of their own job and become much more effective at their job through managing teams of agents rather than just kind of automating all white collar work. So that's what I tend to see happening in companies that are at the leading edge of AI adoption. And most companies are not. I just did a survey for a subsector of the insurance industry. So I'm working with an association that's represents a subsector. Won't say which one, but they did the survey, and like I was struck by the survey responses how few companies in the insurance industry, that subsector, are actually pushing AI adoption hard, and
Hmm.
how they're like, well, we'll wait to see what other people are doing. We want to see a number of case studies. We don't want to rush into it. So, especially in more regulated industries, I've seen that. But even in less regulated industries, I think many people have that attitude.
Yeah, and we did have some data that aligned with what you're saying. So we had
Hmm.
10% that said they were slowing hiring in certain areas in order to see what they can do with AI. And so some of that also included not backfilling positions that maybe they've had
Hmm.
open for a while, or even consolidating
Hmm.
positions. So I think that to me is more realistic. So we had some of
Hmm.
those big standout stats in this survey, but then we did have some of the more realistic. Okay, they might not be letting everybody go, but
Hmm.
they're definitely incorporating AI into their
Hmm.
current workforce and
Hmm.
helping them be more successful. So that was also something that we saw through this survey.
So yeah, so let's talk about that gap between the aspiration and what they're actually doing. So you said only 10% are slowing down their hiring, is what
Hmm.
you're saying?
Yeah,
So that seems
that's what our survey found.
a little bit of a mismatch between people who think that in 12 to 18 months you'll have full AI automation of all of all white collar jobs, and only 10% are actually changing their hiring plans. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that was part of what I noticed in this data and why that 60% stood out to me as feeling a little bit like an outlier in comparison to the rest of some of the data that we collected. Now, we also
Hmm.
found that 24% said that they were eliminating roles because AI can perform the work.
Mm.
So I felt like that is that in the middle number
Hmm.
a little bit. So there is some of that. But even that, I think for a lot of companies is probably a little premature. And if I had to guess, and I should have dug into this data a little bit more, if I had to guess, that's probably your larger organizations
Hmm.
where you have multiple people doing some similar work and they're trying to
Sure.
consolidate down. If you have a smaller organization, you have one person trying to do the job of 3 to 5 people usually. So
Yeah.
AI is probably happily getting integrated there so that that person's a lot less stressed out.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk a little bit more about other data about that is in that gap. Like, what other data points did you find about what people are actually doing, or rather than maybe their aspirations?
Let see. So we had that 60% that said 12 to 18 months, right? But
Hmm.
there were other numbers within that. So we
Okay.
had 8% that felt like it would happen within the next 3 years.
Hmm.
9% thinks it's going to be 3 to 5, and 21% thinks it's going to be more like 5 to 10
Hmm.
years. And I personally feel like that 21% that thinks it's going to be the 5 to 10 years of having more AI take over, I think that feels a lot more realistic,
Hmm.
especially as we are in such early stages of AI
Hmm.
trying to figure out how to integrate it. It's not as trustworthy as we would like it to be in
Sure.
some instances, and we've seen some case studies around that in the last year. So
Hmm.
I think there is a group of people within this segmentation that's like, I get it. This is going to take a little bit longer. So I feel like, again, that 60% is a little bit of an
Hmm.
outlier number to me.
Okay. Do you have other stats on you said 10% are like working on something like they're creating AI roles and 24% are eliminating roles because of AI. Are
Yes.
there, wasn't there a number that said 42% say AI is already actively shrinking their workforce and more than
Yes.
half plan to lay off workers in 2026 because of it? Tell me more about those stats. So what's actually happening? What are people actively doing? So to differentiate between their aspirations and their actions.
Yeah, so 35% say that they're actually using AI to support employees and not reduce
Hmm.
headcount. So I think that's a really important number to pick
Hmm.
out. I think it shows that there's a good chunk of people. I know 35 doesn't always sound like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, it can be. I think it shows that people are recognizing we can't necessarily get rid of this position yet, but we
Hmm.
want to see how it's going to work out. And I think that that supports even what you were saying about working with organizations and how you're seeing them implement AI.
Hmm.
We also found that 11% said that AI is not affecting their workforce size at all.
Hmm.
So they're not
Hmm.
making any decisions or changes based on that.
Hmm. Now, I know that another aspect of the survey was what business leaders suggested folks should do as a result of this automation of white collar work. And what did you find about that?
Yeah, we found that these leaders really wanted AI literacy. That was something that
Hmm.
was emphasized significantly. So for early career workers, they believe 83% need to have AI skills and prioritize AI
Hmm.
skills. 71% said that mid-career needs to start prioritizing AI
Mm.
skills, and 67% said that late career needs to prioritize AI skills. So I think across the board, AI is coming, whether you want it to be there or not. I know
Mhm.
there are some workers that are resisting this transition, and I think that that's going to be to their detriment.
Mhm.
I think they need to really be aware of what their organization is saying and doing toward AI and at least try to adopt it somewhat, especially for efficiency and all of that. Um, Not only that, we are seeing leaders start to emphasize the trades more, which has been a
Mhm.
really interesting
Mhm.
shift that I've seen in multiple multiple surveys that we have done. I think that over the last probably 30 years or so, there's been a really big emphasis on going to college. And now we're starting to see that shift over into
Mhm.
blue collar and trades. And I think that's going to be an interesting shift over the next 10 to 15 years because it is needed. But
Sure.
I don't know that everybody is going to want to go that route
Mhm.
the same way that not everybody wants to embrace AI. So I think those are going to be some interesting trends that we see.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would just encourage leaders to make sure that you're getting feedback from your people at every step
Mhm.
of the way when it comes to AI. I think when we're talking about building agents and trying to learn how to prompt and do all of these things, some people are going to pick up on it really quickly and easily. Other people are going to need a little bit more time because it's a new
Mhm.
skill set. So just make sure you're checking in with your people and providing the support that they need to be successful.
Excellent. Great point to end on. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Julia. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I love being here.
And thank you to the audience for checking out another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you checked out the show and leave a review. It helps us improve the show and helps others discover the show. And if you have any questions, as always, email me at gleb, Gleb, at disasteravoidanceexperts.com.